In this video you will learn how to answer behavioral interview questions using a special spur approach for project managers. This way you don't need to memorize all your answers. Also, I'll give you a framework on how to boost your interview skills, and we'll review common behavioral questions as well. So, what are the behavioral questions? These are the questions that start with "Tell me about the time when you applied leadership skills," or "Tell me about a situation when you had to deal with difficult people." These questions are great for interviewers. They force you to tell a story that they can relate to. Moreover, it's easier to assess your skills and mindset. You see, you'll choose what to talk about. It will show the types of stories that you are proud of. Also, it can show how sincere you are. While these questions are tricky, they are good for you as well. Why? You can get prepared for them. There is a limited set of such questions. By the way, there are two types of these questions: open behavioral questions and situational questions. Common examples of open behavioral questions are to tell about a situation of a difficult task, or a situation where you showed some flexibility or adaptivity, or an example of work in a stressful environment. On the other hand, with situational questions, an interviewer describes your specific situation and asks how would you act. Usually these are common real-life cases. You need to know how to deal with them. So, for example, a customer writes you an angry mail, or two team members are conflicting, and so on. For some reason, people on the internet mix them together. However, there is a big difference, and we'll discuss it in this video as well. First of all, let me share a secret key to answering both types of these behavioral questions. You need to create a list of all your career highlights and group them into three categories: accomplishments, challenges, and failures. Next, you need to map each highlight to a common behavioral question. It's totally fine if you use one highlight to different questions. That will help you to quickly pick up a suitable example and adapt your story to the question from the interviewer. I really recommend that you do it on a regular basis. You see, it always feels like you never have to go for an interview once you get a job. So you gradually start to forget your interview skills. And when you need to start a job search again, you do it from scratch. That's why I do recommend to keep your list of achievements and update it regularly, after an interview or when you gain a new achievement. You never know who will invite you for an interview tomorrow on a short notice. As I said in the beginning, you don't need to memorize all the answers. You must have heard about the STAR technique to answer an interview question. It stands for situation, task, action, results. But I think that STAR technique is not enough for a project manager. All project managers do the same work in general, and you want to stand out from this crowd of similar candidates. That's why I developed this SPAR technique. First of all, I substituted the task with the plan. If there is a situation, you need to act, it's your job. Also, as a project manager, you always plan before you act. You need to articulate it. You need to show that you understand the value of proper planning. You do understand it, don't you? Okay, let's talk about it. We plan to simulate possible future. But what's more important, we need a baseline to ensure that we progress in the correct direction. Also, if we have a plan, most likely we have deadlines and milestones. At the very least, we can track our progress against it. And the B part of the SPAR technique stands for benefits. Did you know that project manager is responsible for continuous improvement of the environment he works in? So you need to show that you are not just following the prescribed job description, but you thrive as a PM, you improve processes, you educate others, you bring additional value to the company, project, clients and the team. I would also recommend that you enhance the action part of the technique with spelling out special leadership approach or a technique that you applied. Even if it's a common technique, do tell about it. And before we move on to the examples, here is an important tip for you. You must know what are the responsibilities of a project manager to build your answer correctly. You should always answer from perspective of a leader and the person who is responsible for everything on a project. I have a video on roles and responsibilities of a project manager. I'll leave you a link in the description below. Do watch it after this one. Now I'll show you what you need to talk about on an example of one question. For other common questions, we'll focus on crucial tips that you need to think through. I don't see value in describing my experience for each question, as it won't be applicable to your case. So the question is, describe a situation where you had to deal with a difficult task. Let's review this question with the SPAR technique. We start with situation. If you want to make it relatable, do use numbers to explain the complexity of the difficult task. Number of people that you manage, duration of the project, project budget, any number that will help imagine the complexity and scale of the problem. It may go as, I successfully managed 7 small projects for 2 different clients at once, and I had a team of 28 people in total. Then the plan. We as project managers plan before we act. In terms of any situation, you can always break it down. You can decompose any complex task into smaller tasks that are more manageable. You can always mention setting personal deadlines to avoid procrastination or perfectionism. So you can say something like, I applied concepts of the work breakdown structure to decompose the task into smaller pieces. Then I set hard deadlines for each piece. Or, to understand the complexity of the task, I created a mind map first. As for the action, here is a catch. As a project manager, you don't work yourself, you delegate tasks and responsibilities. So when it is applicable, your actions should always include leading others to reach the objective. What's more important, you want to articulate some special leadership approach that you applied. Here is an example. I talked with my colleagues to find out who is willing to take some of the tasks and help me. This way I identified which task motivated each team member. If it matched my observations of their strengths, I gladly delegated the task. Also, I took one of the tasks that no one wanted for myself. This way I try to lead by example and show that I take my share. Now you need to talk about results. Do include numbers here as well. Keep in mind the old proverb, you can't manage what you can't measure. If you mention the numbers here, you will imply that you measured and controlled the progress. So you can say something like, we finished the whole work 3 days faster than I planned. All due to the ownership I was able to pass to each team member. They did a great job. Last and the most important, the benefit. The benefit is something that will put you above the competition. Because again, you not only survive at work, you try to improve the processes around you. There are many ways you can put an additional benefit, an additional value. So for example, as there was a chance we'll need to do the same task again, we created a checklist that would help us the next time. As a lesson learned, I asked one of the team members to create a small presentation and share the experience with other teams. Everyone found it valuable. By the way, now that you know about the components of the SPARB approach, you need to review your previous achievements and see whether you can come up with the plan and the benefit parts. This is powerful and will help you stand out from the crowd of the similar candidates. If you like this video so far, give it a thumbs up right now. Thank you in advance, I'll wait. Now let's review the next question. Describe the situation when you had the biggest failure in your career. How did you deal with it? Do talk about a real failure. Don't obscure a success story behind some challenges. Keep in mind there are no perfect managers in the world. We all fail hard once in a while. Recruiters know that as well. They want to hear how honest you are. So tell a story about a real fuck up. I also recommend to add a bit of self-blame or negative marketing here. You do want to articulate the responsibility that you failed to fulfill. That shows that you have some self-awareness and you do take responsibility for your mistakes. By the way, never ever blame others for your failures. Don't even hint that someone other than you contributed to that failure. I often hear something like, yes, it was my fault, but there were certain things that made it happen. Or it was my fault in general, but that guy started it. You as a project manager bear the ultimate responsibility on a project. Even if you are not a PM yet, you do need to act to this standard. After that, you want to focus on the lessons learned. That's where your plan part of the SPARP approach should start. You planned a way to mitigate the problem, but what's more important here, you want to describe the process of self-improvement, not just one-time post-action analysis. Therefore, you want to say that after the failure you put efforts to investigate the root cause of the problem, and you learn the best practices to avoid or overcome these sort of issues. But what's more important, you already put it into practice. And if you can, a story related to this case, that's great. Again, don't forget about the benefits part in the SPARP approach. Did you share this experience? Did you start using a tool or an approach to avoid similar failures? For example, one of my critical failures. It resulted in developing and using the issue log, and now it's a must-have in my project management approach. Or I created a lecture on the total responsibility for a team. Now I give it to each new team I start to manage. Okay, let's move on to another common question. Describe a situation when you had to deal with a difficult customer or sponsor. Whatever the difficulty you faced with the clients, it boils down to conflict resolution. Here are several tips that will help you to position yourself as a professional PM and as a great leader. Again, do mention the issue log as a means to plan and control conflict resolution. When we talk about stakeholders, it's also wise to mention that you do perform stakeholder analysis. So you do know what your stakeholders want and how to engage them on your project. You need to display the understanding of a conflict in general. You know that what people show you on the surface is not the root cause of the problem. With clients it's usually easy. They don't trust you yet. That's why they try to over-control you. That's the source of the conflict. So you should always focus on finding the real root cause of the problem when you talk about conflict resolution. Also, it's important that you mention that you validate the results of your efforts. You do ensure that conflict is actually resolved. Okay, let's speed up and quickly review several more examples of behavioral questions. So this one. Describe a situation where you improved something in a company. Okay, that's a simple question and it fully aligns with SPARP technique, but do use numbers. You want to show that you control the process. Describe a situation where you had to apply time management skills to achieve goals. Again, it works well with the SPARP technique. Nothing special here. However, I would invest some time to ensure that you do have a productivity system that you can mention and describe. Don't get into a pitfall of just saying, I manage my time closely. There should be a system. Describe time when you worked in a stressful situation or environment. Okay, let's break this down into SPARP. Situation. If you talk about stressful situation, do show how you got into it and why you think it is stressful. Plan. Describe how you transition from awareness about the situation to proactively solving it. And as always, you analyze the problem and you created an action plan. Action. Do focus on special productivity or problem-solving technique here. Always articulate some special or named approach. Results. Do use some numbers here. And results? Do actually articulate how you use this experience to improve environment or your personal project management approach. Next, describe the time when you introduced changes to the work environment or processes. Here you need to show your understanding that changes don't come easy. There's always some kind of resistance. But you planned for it, you got buy-in from your team and your leadership, and you implemented the change successfully. And again, the secret to successful answer here is an additional measurable benefit. It goes without saying you achieved the results, but you went beyond that and created some additional value. It didn't happen on its own, you proactively managed it. By the way, the sponsor of this video is my free career change cheat sheet. It's challenging and overwhelming to get your first project management role. This cheat sheet gives you an action plan to get a promotion to a PM in the nearest future. So if you want to become a project manager, you need to get a copy. Link is in the description. Okay, let's also talk about situational questions. This kind of question describe a specific and usually a common situation. All project managers face them often. These questions test your understanding of basic principles of leadership and management. Most of the time there is a best practice or a preferred approach. So here's an example. An engineer provided you an estimate for a part of the work. How do you ensure that he provided accurate estimates that are adequate to his performance level? They actually ask you how to check if people tell you the truth. Here are several steps that you can take. Ask for a low-level decomposition of the work. Ideally, pieces of work should be 1 to 5 days maximum. Show estimates to other engineers or subject matter experts for a sanity check. Also, ask to explain what work is included. Listen how confident the person is. Ask some follow-up questions like what are the risks or what buffers you included and so on. And then you can apply group estimation techniques like planning poker to get the high-level estimation and again sanity check. Next one. You come into the workspace and see one of the team members looking absently into the window. You watch her for a few minutes, she is still staring, doing nothing. It's a leadership/empathy test. For sure you shouldn't tell the team member to get back to work. You need to show care and ask if something is wrong, or if she is dreaming about a vacation. Do a small talk and try to identify the root cause of this low mood. You should never ignore such signs of low motivation and engagement. You need to offer some kind of help or solution if there is a problem. One of team members, John, conflicts a lot with another team member, Kate. You talked with John once and pointed out the inappropriate behavior. He agreed to the poor temper and promised not to repeat the conflict. However, in a few weeks the conflict repeats. What will you do? Okay, do notice that this question doesn't test your conflict resolution skills. It's about your tolerance to bullying and conflicting people on a project. You made an effort to resolve the conflict. Now it's time to start a formal process. Quite possible you need to remove the person from the project. You do need to have some sort of internal process of how to assess the necessity of firing or removing a person from the project. As you can see, you can prepare for all sorts of questions, but you need to put some efforts in advance. If you want to become a project manager, do get the career change cheat sheet. The link is in the description. Subscribe if you haven't done it yet and hit that bell button. I'll see you in the next video.